Welcome back to the Dr. Cliff Show. Today is part one of a two-part series where we're talking about the differences between over-the-counter hearing aids and prescription hearing aids. Coming up. We are back live for our fourth live episode of the Dr. Cliff Show. I'm Dr. Cliff Olson, founder of Applied Hearing Solutions in Phoenix, Arizona, and I am here with my co-host.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Rachel Cook. I'm also an audiologist at Applied Hearing Solutions in Arizona as well. Thanks for joining us. Like you just said, we're doing a two-part series on this one. So last episode we reviewed, actually 2 episodes ago, we reviewed the release of the new FDA regulations regarding OTC hearing aids. Last episode we reviewed prescription hearing aids, and today we are finally putting the two of them together. And so today and next week we're going to get much deeper into the weeds on the specific differences between these two separate classes of devices. But today we'll be starting with a brief history of these devices, kind of where we've come from overall. And then this episode will really focus in on the major differences between these devices, who they're for, cost differences. If we have time, we'll get into accessibility today. I think it's very possible that we won't because
we'll probably get bogged down on costs.
I think we're probably going to have that happen.
Yeah.
But if not, that's fine. Just definitely tune in next week, and we're just going to continue the conversation from there. So, first up, we've got our very first sponsor here, and jumping straight into it, today we've got Eosera. Eosera is an entire comprehensive lineup of ear care products. They have Ear Wax MD, Ear Itch MD, Ear Pain MD. Today I kind of wanted to talk about their Wax Blaster. First of all, what a name. That's a fun name. But their Wax Blaster MD Pro, that is actually a device that is used to irrigate the ears out. So it's an electric device, it's completely rechargeable, and it uses this dual stream of water to send in body temperature water into the ear to kind of flush out some of that harder stuff. So this can also be used in tandem with their Earwax MD drops to soften the wax up, and then using the earwax or the Wax Blaster, sorry, to flush that out from there. So there's a catch basin that comes with it too, so that you don't get too dirty doing that. And
that would be a mess. Please use the basin when you're using the Wax Blaster MD Pro.
Yeah, and all of these products should be available at CVS, Walmart, Walgreens, most national retailers. But if you visit eosera.com and use code CLIFF20, you get 20% off your entire purchase.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, Eosera. So today, let's just jump right into the history of hearing aids. Now, we were talking a little bit before the show. I have to plug this. My favorite thumbnail I've ever created on any video I've ever done on my YouTube channel was the history of hearing aids. And so you guys got to check that out, but not right now. So I'm going to give you a brief rundown of some of the history of where hearing aids really originated from. Mm-hmm. So a lot of you would probably be familiar with the ear trumpet. That was around the 17th century. That is basically something you just kind of put up to your ear to kind of funnel sound into your ear canal. There is a good example of what an ear trumpet would actually look like. Then we go into 1898, and the first hearing aid that was created using telephone technology from Alexander Graham Bell's technology, and it actually used electricity to kind of amplify sound a little bit. Couldn't get much amplification out of it, but it was kind of the start to everything else. And then when we started into the 1940s, so I mean, pretty big gap there in terms of advancement. When you start thinking about hearing aids nowadays, like we advance every couple of years, like just new tech comes out, blows the old tech out of the water. This took, what, a good 42 years before they had something else significant that came up. Right. And that was around the World War II era. So transistors were created and basically replaced vacuum tubes. So you're able to make something that was substantially smaller and create amplification with it. And then when we really had a surge in this is when a lot of the service members came back from war with a lot of hearing loss, of course. And so a lot of audiology really kind of got started around that time as well. And then in the 1970s, the government decided that audiologists can fit hearing aids. So in case you were unaware, audiologists were not always the ones who were treating hearing loss
Right.
with hearing aids, right? And there's we probably need a whole entire episode about how that came to fruition, to where audiologists are actually one of the main professionals who are treating individuals with hearing
Right.
loss. But here's the crazy thing, and again, we were talking about this a lot this week when we were prepping for the show, is that fully digital hearing aids didn't come around until 1996. So we saw Widex with their Senso hearing aid came about, and then that was followed very, very shortly by Oticon with their DigiFocus hearing aids. And when I think about it, so I was a freshman in high school, and I feel like, we were in, modern, 20th century at that point. I'm like, we probably have digital a lot of stuff at that time, but to think that 1996 was the first time that we had a digital hearing aid just blows my mind.
I know. And the fact, too, that they ended up, most of the hearing aid manufacturers went straight into digital and did not look back. You would be hard-pressed to find any major hearing aid manufacturer on the market right now that has a linear or analog device, rather.
Yeah, I mean, there's like one that I can think of, but I mean, not for where individuals who need like a super power or ultra power hearing aid, not where they're getting analog, which I wish they would bring that back, if I'm being quite honest with you.
Yeah, a lot of people really prefer that sound quality too, but it just kind of depends what you're looking for out of the devices. But it is interesting that it took so long to get to the point of digital technology for hearing aids, and thank goodness, because that very first one, that 1898 hearing aid, they said that those were between 7 and 8 pounds a piece, and you would literally have to lug that around with you wherever you were going.
Probably good for your physical fitness.
Yeah, you could use it. It's dual purpose as weights as well. But obviously much more cumbersome than the devices that we have today. These are ones that are worn all of the time. Most of them are pretty dang discreet. And so overall, good advancements for sure.
Absolutely.
Also, we have on here too that across the board now, audiologists can dispense prescription hearing aids, and like you were saying, that was not the case initially, and so now we're going to probably see a few more state laws be impacted by this new final ruling, but we'll just have to see how that ends up.
Absolutely. So, in the past couple episodes, if you guys have been watching those, we've been talking about, and the reason we're talking about this topic again, OTC hearing aids, prescription hearing aids, is because of these new final guidelines that were finally passed by the FDA that will take effect in October. So we want to make sure that there's enough accurate information for you guys to start making decisions about what you ultimately want to do with your hearing health care. And so that's why we want to kind of go into some of the similarities even and differences of OTC hearing aids and prescription hearing aids. So let's start diving into OTC hearing aids. So let's kind of bring everyone up to speed with those a little bit.
Right. So we did a full deep dive on this 2 weeks ago, so definitely go back and watch that if you haven't already. But today, we're kind of talking about the history of these OTC devices, and quite honestly, the history is kind of interesting because really we have yet to see what true OTC devices are, mostly just because this is an entirely new class of devices. And so in the past, these types of devices were not necessarily allowed to be referred to as hearing aids. No one was enforcing it, but they were more considered sound amplifiers. And I think that was a differentiating point between the two of them. And there was this debate on kind of what constitutes a hearing aid, or how do you classify a hearing aid in that respect. There's a lot of these companies that have popped up here and there over the years. Some of them stick around longer than others, that's for sure, and that's for various reasons as well. But we'll be seeing a big change in this space moving forward. I think it's hard to say exactly what the history of these devices looked like.
I mean, when you look at the FDA, how they kind of classified something that was not considered a restrictive medical device like a hearing aid, it was a sound amplifier. So something that would turn up all the volume, not intended to treat hearing loss, intended to help you hear bird sounds. That literally is in the documentation from the FDA, so you can hear like birds and stuff like that, just to kind of enhance things a little bit. But you start looking at companies. There's some out there like Eargo. You have a company, Bose, out there. Bose actually got classified as a hearing aid from research that they did on their devices several years ago. The Bose Sound Control hearing aids is what they released to market. But you would technically consider those hearing aids. But we call this direct to consumer because OTC technically has never been a thing until literally right now. And we still, if you look at all the devices out there, I think that some of them will transition into being OTC hearing aids, but they actually have to meet the regulations before they can do so. So that's kind of where we are in the history of this. It's like it went from amplifiers to people like calling themselves their devices hearing aids to now they actually have some regulation that they have to meet to be able to be called an OTC hearing aid. Because if you don't meet the OTC guidelines or the prescription guidelines, you're technically still a sound amplifier, right? And then whether or not the FDA enforces you to like don't call it a hearing aid if it doesn't meet the regulations, who knows, right?
Absolutely. So now I want to dive a little bit into who these devices are really for. And so we'll start off by talking a little bit about OTC devices. Again, we reviewed this, but their candidacy requirements are really, you got to be an adult, you got to be above the age of 18, perceived mild to moderate hearing loss, and they do not require an assessment by a medical professional to obtain one of these devices. So you're really deciding on your own if you are a candidate for one of these devices. And they cannot be used with any of the red flag conditions. And so if you're not familiar with those red flag conditions, that's going to be asymmetrical tinnitus, so tinnitus that's different between ears. Same thing with the hearing loss that's different between the ears. Active pain or drainage from the ears, balance issues, or any sudden changes in hearing. So anything that would regularly necessitate a physician referral regardless is going to continue to be something that ends up being a physician referral.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, a lot of these red flags, I mean, you have to make sure that these red flags are identified, even if you go for a prescription hearing aid. So like you can't just go and get a prescription hearing aid and ignore the red flags. Like you still have to pay attention to those. But prescription hearing aids are for everybody, right? You can be an infant. You can be someone who, is extremely old, whatever you want to classify that as. And so anybody can use one of these prescription hearing aids, right? Any severity, so whether it's a normal level of hearing loss, and I know that sounds ridiculous to say, but some individuals with normal hearing gain benefit from use of hearing aids, all the way up to severe to profound levels. Now, you might get to the point where you need a cochlear implant instead of a hearing aid or some other type of prescription hearing aid, like a bone conduction hearing aid or something like that. But those are, again, for anyone who has some of these medical conditions that need to get treated with hearing aids, okay? But, I think that the large thing here is that complex cases of hearing loss, more severe cases of hearing loss that falls underneath the age of 18 years old, that is really who prescription hearing aids are intended for.
Right, yeah. And even then, if, let's say, the hearing loss got to the point where it was beyond the capability of a standard or traditional hearing aid and you needed a bone conduction hearing aid or you needed a cochlear implant, that entire process is still going to be facilitated by an audiologist, probably in tandem with an ENT physician or an otologist rather. But then once that is done, the surgery is completed and you are healed, you're back in the hands of an audiologist again. So prescription hearing aids quite literally cover the entire scope of hearing loss.
Absolutely.
So
let's go ahead and jump right into our next sponsor here. So our next sponsor is Resound, and they've been our sponsor since day one here on the show. So here's the thing. You may not be aware of this, but 80% of individuals who have hearing loss, the biggest complaint that they have is hearing better in background noise. Everybody wants to hear better in background noise. Well, Resound came out with their new Omnia hearing aids here, and they provide 150% better speech understanding compared to their previous version of devices. Now, something that's also really cool about these hearing aids is that they have a Check My Fit feature. What a lot of people probably also don't realize is that if you do not have the hearing aid inserted into your ear canals correctly at the proper depth that they were set up as to be by your hearing care professional, then you could be leaking out up to 11 decibels of sound, which, for those of you who don't understand how decibels work, that is a massive amount of sound. It's literally overcutting your volume in half, so you're not going to get the full benefit out of those hearing aids. Well, they have a Check My Fit feature that you can actually use your smartphone to determine if the hearing aids are inside of your ear canals correctly.
It's an ear selfie.
It's an ear selfie, right? And you can send those to your audiologist and see how they reply to you with that when you're sending your audiologist selfies. But if you guys want more information on this, you can, of course, check out any one of my review videos that I've done on Resound products, and you can go to resound.com for more information as well.
Perfect.
All right, so thank you, Resound. I think now it's time for our Hearing Up Provider Spotlight. Now, if you guys do not know what the Hearing Up Provider Network is, it is a network of vetted hearing care professionals who are committed to following best practices, which are what need to be followed to ensure that you receive the maximum amount of benefit from your hearing aids. So each week we like to do a Hearing Up Provider Spotlight, and I'm really excited to hear who this week's Spotlight is on.
Well, you are now outnumbered because there's 2 Dr. Cooks in the house.
Oh boy.
This week we've got Dr. Kristen Cook. So Dr. Cook is an audiologist who received her doctorate from A.T. Still University in 2012. In that same year, she ended up opening her own practice, Evolution Hearing, in Charlottesville, Virginia. She's a member of the Academy of Doctors of Audiology and the Audiology Practice Standards Organization, and she also serves as both an adjunct faculty member at James Madison University and is also a preceptor of audiology students. Dr. Cook's involvement in the local community has also resulted in her receiving several awards, such as Best Bedside Manner from Our Health magazine and Charlottesville's Finest for both local audiologist and hearing aid center. So that is incredible. I mean, incredible resume, incredible bio. I was going through it this morning.
She's
I was
been at
like,
this
oh
a
my
little bit
goodness.
longer than us, okay? She's had
Okay.
time to pad the stats a little bit, so we'll
Okay,
give her that.
Good. Well, hello, Kristen.
Well, thanks for having me.
Hi.
Absolutely. So thank you for joining us. So we'll jump right off the bat. Since this is the Hearing Up Provider Spotlight, we always like to find out what reasons did you choose to join the network?
I really wanted to surround myself with other professionals who get the highest level of care, confidence in what they're doing. So that was very important to me.
And so, we've noticed that through creating, video content and all of that surrounding best practices, that individuals were having a really difficult time finding who to actually go to. So that has been an incredibly beneficial thing. How has the response from patients out there in Virginia been to being able to find you and knowing that you're going to be following best practices?
Yeah, it's been great. Kind of gotten this reputation around town that I'm the best fixer. And so there are unfortunately a lot of stories of people coming in. They've had disappointments, frustrations, and with the testing that we do in the office, we've been able to solve some of those major concerns, figure out what's happening, and make things the best that they can be. Optimize their experience.
That's great. That's incredible. Now, we've been doing a lot of talking here about OTC and prescription. How do you view what's been happening with all the new legislation and rules and things like that?
It's been an exciting and nerve-wracking time. I'm excited that there is more accessibility, possibly more financial options that people can explore that need to be done. I don't support the misleading claims and the false advertising. There's a lot of that out there, and my concern is that that's going to be even worse. But I do support the idea of giving people more options, bringing more awareness to hearing loss in general, and making this an easier process for our patients. I've heard so many stories. I want to allow people to have the best experience possible, and that's through an over-the-counter hearing aid or a prescription hearing aid. If we can give people the options and make the best they can do with all of our best practices, that would be the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I kind of echo the same sentiment with that. I've been a huge supporter of OTC hearing aids coming out. I think that it's going to lead to a lot more individuals choosing to treat their hearing loss. And here's the thing, if they don't have a good experience with it, I think that audiologists need to be there to kind of help pick them up and make them work better, whether that's with the OTC hearing aid, just like you mentioned, or whether it's with the prescription level hearing aid. You're considered the fixer in your local area, so what's your plan when you inevitably have individuals who have attempted to use OTC and they're not getting the amount of benefit that they're expecting from them?
I mean, with the real measurements, we actually show what the devices are doing, the devices they currently have, and where they're currently programmed, and then we could possibly do a head-to-head comparison with their prescription and their true targeted levels. I think a lot of people don't realize they're missing, and so even if they do try to do this on their own, they may kind of give themselves less volume than they really need. They're still missing quite a bit of information. We get devices in a test box and do the engineering specifications, see if they're actually working like they're supposed to. Interesting story, just about 2 weeks ago, brand new hearing aid, straight from one of the big 6 manufacturers, took it out of the box, and it was not working like it was supposed to. So it rarely happens, but I slept better at night that night, knowing that we caught that, and didn't fit a patient with a one of a hearing aid, especially spending this kind of money.
Absolutely. And, you know, regardless of the amount of money, if someone's buying a hearing device that they think is going to work for them, you want to make sure it's actually mechanically functioning the right way. Otherwise, like, what's the point? And the thing that I'm scared about, and I know that you're probably worried about too, is that the individuals who attempt to use over-the-counter hearing aids and they don't get the amount of benefit they thought that they should be getting, and then they give up entirely. Like, that's the thing that I'm most worried about, which is why I think that we need to be putting out a lot of information for individuals to say, hey, like, we support you getting OTC. In fact, here's some information to help you identify what the better ones are. But if you don't have benefit with them, you have to go and see someone.
Yep.
Right. And thank goodness we have
experts,
professionals,
best trained professionals to help take care of all their needs.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, hey, we appreciate you so much for coming on the show tonight. We think this is a really important conversation to have with OTC and all that. And then on top of that, I mean, the reason we're doing this Hearing Up Provider Spotlight is because we believe that, you know, following best practices is the most important thing when it comes down to hearing healthcare, even more important than the actual device that you use itself. So I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much for taking time out of your day. I know it's a little bit later over there on the East Coast, and I see you're still at the office. So I think it's time that maybe you could go home, have some dinner now, yeah?
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.
Bye,
thank you so
other
much.
Dr. Cook.
Yeah. 2 Dr. Cooks. This might be the only time ever. Who knows?
I know. She's great. Yeah, I think that really highlights, you know, the importance of having a best practices professional, someone who's going to take the time with a prescription hearing aid or with an OTC device. If you're not having the luck that you're looking for out of an OTC device, the end result out of both of those situations is going to be you got to find a provider that is going to do it and do it right.
That's right. And, you know, that's why the whole Hearing Up Provider Network is there. And I personally know every single provider in the network. They have all submitted essentially applications, and they've proven that they have the equipment. They've proven that they use the equipment. I've had interviews with every single one of them, and I know that every single one of them would be more than happy to take someone who's not having success with an over-the-counter hearing aid and help them out to either make that device work better or transition them into something that would work even better than that OTC device.
Right. Well, we're going to jump into our very next sponsor segment here. Today we're talking about Sound Oasis. Between 10 and 15% of Americans actually suffer with tinnitus perception. I myself suffer from tinnitus, more predominantly in my right ear, but this is very common. We see it in clinic very often. A large majority of that is due to the fact that tinnitus is associated with hearing loss. So, of course, we see those patients because they go hand in hand. But when you have tinnitus, what do you do about it? And for patients who maybe have not proceeded with hearing treatment yet, or maybe they don't have a hearing loss that necessitates hearing treatment, they still need some sort of help in that sector and help with their tinnitus perception. So for Sound Oasis, they are an entire lineup of different sound generator products. And they have sound machines, they have sleep masks, they have sleep pillows, they've got pillow speakers. I just looked on their website today. They actually have a sound therapy machine for pets too, just to help with some, background sounds and things. And then a bunch of them for infants and babies as well. But for most people, they're going to be using these at night. Maybe if you work in a quiet office and your tinnitus is bothersome in your workplace, that's another place that Sound Oasis products would definitely come in handy. Trying to think other places too. work, home, sleeping, pretty much anywhere.
Yeah,
anywhere.
I mean, you can use it. I use it when I script my videos.
Yeah, exactly.
I use a sound generator because I don't want it to, anything else is happening inside my house. Maybe I need to get my dog one of those too, so she doesn't bark every single time I'm in the middle of recording a new video.
I think Charlie would appreciate that. So if you or someone that you know or love suffers from tinnitus and could use a sound generator at home as well, Sound Oasis is definitely the place to go for that. And if you visit soundoasis.com and use the promo code SLEEP, you get a 20% off discount of any of their products. So I'd say definitely go check that out.
Awesome. I know my mother went on there and used a discount code to get 20% off because she got one for herself.
Perfect.
So that's totally cool.
I use one at night as well, and it's amazing. It's super helpful.
Basically, I'm trying to figure out a way to get my mom into every single episode of this show I could possibly do.
Perfect.
Right? I think my dad probably uses one too. So there we go. I threw my dad in there as well.
Your mom can answer for your dad.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, perfect.
So what we want to jump into now is probably the part of the topic of OTC that everybody is most interested in, which is the cost of these devices. Now, you had mentioned a little bit earlier that we technically do not have an over-the-counter hearing aid on the market right now. And that is going to be coming. What we have right now is direct-to-consumer hearing aids / amplifiers, right?
Right.
So we're basing some of our, assessments on what these OTC hearing aids are going to end up costing based on what these direct-to-consumer hearing aids are costing right now. So, and the range is pretty vast. You can literally go to Walgreens right now and get some of these amplifiers that they have there that'll cost you around $29.99.
Yeah.
Right? And with tax, depending on what state you live in, you're spending a little over $30 to get an amplifier. Now that's typically for one ear, right?
Yes.
But you can buy a pair of devices. So like you have companies like Eargo that it's going to cost you around $3,000 to get those devices right now. Now, here's the thing that I think that a lot of people don't realize is that regulation is going to lead to increased costs most likely, right? Now, when you start looking at devices that currently cost $250, maybe those shift up to, $300 or something like that. But what are some of the ways that pricing is going to get impacted by this legislation?
Oh, goodness. Well, I think first and foremost, these devices are going to be subjected to safety testing now. They're going to have compliance measures that they need to be reaching and within specifications on. And this is good. This is the positive side of OTC
Absolutely.
regulation that we were really looking for, which was putting some actual limits and some actual rules on a lot of these fly-by-night companies that were potentially putting output limits that were too high or devices that weren't doing what they were advertising to be doing. So basically the safety testing, compliance standards, now once they do those things and get that taken care of, now they have to relabel their product as an OTC product. And so 2 episodes ago, I was talking about how the letters OTC literally have to be on the box now, as well as all of those red flag conditions and some of the screening material that they use to help consumers figure out if they do have a perceived mild to moderate hearing loss. All of that relabeling is going to cost a bit as well. And not to mention bringing these products to newer markets. And so in the past, yes, CVS, Walgreens had the availability of some of these DTC products at $29.99, like you said. But now I think we're going to start seeing even completely different players jumping into the game. I think we'll be seeing Target, we'll be seeing Best Buy, we'll be seeing consumer electronics stores, grocery stores, everything. Like anywhere where you can buy a pair of readers, like the non-prescription lenses, I think you're going to be able to buy an OTC device, and that costs money to get them there too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, distribution of anything that's not being done online will cost more money, right? I mean, but even with shipping costs and all that, that's going to incur fees from these companies as well. You start to look at companies though, like Apple. So I talk about Apple a lot. I think they are going to be a major player in over-the-counter hearing aids. They technically had a direct-to-consumer hearing aid already, which is the Apple AirPods Pro. And those retail for around $249, and you can get a pair of devices that you can actually either upload a hearing test into, you can test yourself with the Mimi app on the iPhone, and you can get some amplification out of those units. Now, what's going to happen when Apple has to actually comply with these regulations? They're going to have to go in and make sure that their devices are capable of meeting the specifications that are required to be considered an OTC device. Otherwise, they're going to get relegated to like the amplifier category,
Right.
which just doesn't have the same marketing ring to it, right?
But I'm thinking from a relabeling standpoint, like Apple marketing is, it's very slick, it's very sleek. You got the single apple on most of everything and nothing else on the box. That's not going to fly now. So I'm interested to see how they relabel that, and if they'll want to still be in this space as a hearing aid type of product. I think they should be.
They should be, and they probably do want to be, considering how much of an emphasis they've put into health in general.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens with them. But, there's some other considerations when it comes to cost, because it's not just the cost of the devices here. I mean, it could be, but what happens when that device it fails? Right? I mean, you might have a certain warranty period of time, but is it going to be a long warranty, like 3 to 5 years, which is what you would expect to get out of a prescription level hearing aid, perhaps, or even longer than that? You might even have to have some professional care that goes along with it, because just like we were talking with Dr. Kristen Cook out there in Virginia, that she's likely going to be having people come in with these devices that she's going to have to actually manipulate them in a way to make sure that they're functioning the right way for that patient, right? So these are additional cost considerations that you will have to actually pay a professional money potentially to get your OTC hearing aid actually functioning the right way.
Yeah. And just because an OTC product you're able to walk into a store and buy it and have it, I think what consumers really need to be aware of is don't make that let you think that you don't ever need to see a professional at all. Like, there are those red flag conditions that you got to be aware of. If you're not getting the benefit that you're looking for, I mean, it's very, very possible that even with an OTC device, the involvement of a professional still might be there. And like you said, you have to be ready to pay the costs to receive that additional care as well.
And, I think that there's potentially additional costs. I've had people say, well, Cliff, if one of these $500 hearing aids doesn't help me, I'm just going to buy this other pair of $500 hearing aids. And then if those don't work, I'm going to buy this other pair of $500 hearing aids. And who knows what the return period is going to be on those.
I've seen it. I've seen patients who've come in with, I mean, you've seen it too. We've seen it together. They walk in with the bag, right? And they set it down and they've got this lineup of just several different devices. Some OTC, some prescription, maybe a mix of both. But either way, you see patients who come in that are dissatisfied with their devices and how they're functioning. And instead of seeking professional involvement at that point, or a best practices provider at that point, they just move on to the next one. And they hope that it works. And sometimes I'm sure it does. A lot of times it doesn't. And then they move on to the next one. And so that's a cost consideration, as well as looking at how much money is being sunk into devices that were never right for you in the first place.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. And so I think I want to make sure that everyone knows, like, if you guys have questions about the stuff that we're talking about, make sure that you go on to Facebook Live or YouTube Live and start asking those questions, because we're going to have a Q&A segment after this as well. But I think that this is a really good time for us to jump into the cost considerations for prescription hearing aids, because we are also talking about cost implications that you guys need to know about.
Right. So this is a very complicated topic, very heavy-handed, lots of information that goes into this. But I think the first thing that we should talk about with prescription level devices and the cost differences that you'll see within the prescription hearing aid category is technology level. And I think that you explained that perfectly. So
most manufacturers, prescription level manufacturers, will come out with 3 to 5 tiers of devices. Now, each time you go down in technology tier, it takes features and customizations away from us when we're doing programming of the hearing aids, but it does also lower the cost. I typically recommend people go with the highest level you can reasonably afford. If you cannot afford it, that is the reason you should be dropping down in tech level. And sometimes you can get down to a pretty low level of cost when it comes down to these really basic entry-level devices. So, and that obviously, if you're having cost concerns, you can drop down to a lower tech level. I don't know. I don't think that OTC is going to have different tiers of technology. I think they're just going to come out with, this is our best, here's our price point, right? And to some degree, I wish major hearing aid manufacturers would just put out their best, but they are also trying to make sure that people can have access to some affordable care as well.
Right. I think with an OTC, we definitely might see the involvement of like a standard version and like a pro version or something like that.
Yeah, that's actually probably right.
Maybe. We'll see. But another thing that goes into this is whether or not the services that are rendered by the professional who is assessing, selecting, fitting, programming these devices, are the services that come with that device bundled or unbundled? And this term comes up a lot in the audiology community, but I'm not exactly sure how familiar consumers are with this idea of the services that are rendered when you're actually purchasing that product. Are they included in the cost of the devices, or are you paying for them separately? Or is it a hybrid model where you pay for some of the services up front at the same time that you're purchasing the devices, and then you're paying for some of the services later? And that's going to have a huge impact on how much money you're paying now versus down the line.
Yeah, a lot of people, so historically it came about where everything was bundled. Like you couldn't even find a clinic that would service your hearing aids at a certain fee. You would have to buy hearing aids from them, and then the cost of care for 3, 5, 7 lifetime of the devices was all included in that.
Yeah.
And so of course that number is going to be a greatly inflated number, right? And so that's where a lot of these, when they're looking for what's the average cost of a hearing aid, well, they come up with these numbers that are like $4,000, $5,000 for a hearing aid. That is because the care is bundled into it. Now, there is a mass exodus from that line of thinking inside of the audiology community, where a lot of individuals are starting to transition into this, kind of a hybrid model, but also fee-for-service, where you pay for the devices, you pay for your fitting, you pay for all the follow-ups at the time that they actually occur.
Right.
And then, of course, like when you transition into the more of the hybrid, they have like service plans that you can get. So if you buy, let's say, a prescription hearing aid or an OTC hearing aid, you come in, get a subscription of service plan, and then they will take care of you inside of that service plan.
Right. Yeah. Few considerations with this as well, though, is that location is most definitely going to play a role. There are some of these clinics that, you look in Surprise, Arizona, or Sun City, Arizona, rather, and those locations, they're everywhere, so the level of competition is really, really high, but there are other areas that I would consider more medical deserts in a way, that maybe don't have as many providers as well, and so that can most definitely play a role in the cost factor. Even just travel to places like that can play a role in that too.
Well, I think of like New York City. Like you're going to spend more for hearing care and hearing aids in New York City compared to if you live in rural Illinois, kind of like my parents do.
Yeah. I think I've seen articles all the time that try to give cost estimates for hearing aids. I don't think that you will ever find a single article that will match with a cost estimate of another article. Like the range that you will see on the internet is just all over the place, and it's because it truthfully is all over the place. It's literally dependent on so many factors.
Yeah, it's the reason why I never mention price in any of my review videos, because it is impossible to estimate price for an individual that is realistic of what they're going to find in their local market.
Right. We also have quality of services that are involved, and so, I think about all of the things that a best practice provider goes through when fitting devices, and it is hours and hours and hours and hours of customized, individualized, one-on-one support. And so, obviously, those services generally tend to cost a bit more than if they were just going to program the devices, pop them on your ears, and say, okay, I don't plan to ever see you again.
Until you need your next set of hearing aids.
Until you need your next set of hearing aids, and then we're always here, right? So I think that having a provider that follows all of those steps to get you hearing your best is worth the money, for sure. You just have to figure out where that falls within your own
and again, like it's if you can afford it, that's great. If you can't afford it, that is a reason why maybe you actually go down the path of OTC, or you go down the path of getting a lower cost prescription level device, right? And I think that when you start looking at cost savings a little bit on the prescription side, prescription hearing aids usually come with longer warranties. The prescription hearing aids usually last a lot longer, especially if you've had good professional care keeping those devices going along. I had a patient one time with 12-year-old hearing aids, and she was still super happy with them. So like you can make them last a long time as long as you take good care of them. And then, you can actually modify them over the course of time too. So someone who starts off with a mild level of hearing loss or moderate level of hearing loss, if that ends up transitioning into a moderately severe or profound level of hearing loss, a lot of these hearing aids, prescription hearing aids that you can modify them, just change the receiver on them to give you an ultra power receiver, and you don't have to buy a new hearing aid.
Right.
You just buy a new receiver, which is extremely cost effective, cheaper than any probably OTC device that you'll find out there. So from a cost perspective, you can make prescription very cost effective.
Yeah. The idea that these hearing aids will essentially grow with you. So if your hearing loss does change, maybe it becomes asymmetrical. the devices can have these parts switched out, and then all of a sudden you're working with a much higher power device than you were before, but the hearing aid itself is still the same.
Exactly
we just
the
changed
same.
the components and the programming,
yeah.
to match what you need in that moment.
Absolutely. Now, if you want to keep your hearing aids functioning as long as humanly possible, it might be a good idea to have an extended warranty on those hearing aids. So a company, ESCO, who specializes in providing insurance coverage for your hearing aids, some hearing aid manufacturers cap the amount of extensions you can do on your warranty. So what happens if you lose a hearing aid? What happens if you damage it beyond the point that it can be repaired? Or what happens if it just needs a repair from the manufacturer and you don't have a warranty? Sometimes that can be extremely costly. So you can actually purchase loss and damage coverage, repair coverage, or both of them combined through esco.com. You can actually get an estimate on esco.com for your hearing aids that you currently own right now. All you have to do is actually go to esco.com, go to esco.com/Dr. Cliff, and if you just enter in the serial numbers for your devices on their website, and you can get a $10 Visa gift card if you do that,
Yeah.
right? So free money
Right.
to go and do that. Plus, you can actually check out and see what it would cost you if you have devices that are out of warranty right now. You can see what that would ultimately cost you moving forward. So a great option if you're the type of person who wants to make the hearing aids that you have function really well for a long time without any surprises of those devices malfunctioning.
Right.
All right, so
Okay, fun time.
this is my favorite part of every show. This is where we bring Kelsey on, who
Yes.
is our audiology resident.
Hello.
And
Hello.
she is going to be asking us questions from the viewers. So let's see what we've got.
We compiled quite a list today, so we'll get through as many as
Okay.
we possibly can. They're also kind of in order from top to bottom of the show, so everybody bear with us. We're kind of moving backwards and then back to the end. Okay.
Okay.
So for both of you, what is the oldest hearing aid or the oldest generation of hearing aids that you guys have worked with and programmed in a clinic?
Oh boy, I don't even know if I know the answer to that question. I know. What are the Resound ones that look like little triangles?
The Delta.
Yeah, maybe that one.
I think
Maybe
Oticon was the
Oticon
Delta, wasn't it? Oticon Delta, but Resound had a
Resound
different
had a
one.
triangle-y one too.
Yeah. So
Regardless,
this is
I think those are 2010.
Yeah, so we're like
Ish.
horrible people to ask about that because
I
like
know.
wait a couple weeks when we have Scott Frink, Dr. Scott Frink on the show. That dude's been around forever. He'll probably tell you hearing aids that he was fitting like that Alexander Graham Bell hearing aid.
No, guaranteed, because not only that, his dad was an audiologist as well, which means he grew up in an audiology clinic. So he's probably
Yeah,
seen
no, you're right.
that
He's
version.
probably back at earhorn status.
Yeah. He's just got one hanging in the back.
I think we have an ear horn somewhere in the office, or one of the offices that I've worked at. We have an ear horn somewhere, just to show patients kind of like the difference between.
I must try one. I need to know. But I think that's the oldest one that I've worked with. I've seen a lot of the analog BTEs. I've never touched them because I'm too afraid to touch them, because when they're that old, out of warranty, no longer repairable, I'm like, I am not touching this. Because I'm going to break this.
I had my friend, an audiologist in Florida, April Royan. I had a patient who wanted an analog hearing aid, and I put out on Facebook like, "Hey, anybody that I know, if you have an analog hearing aid, let me know." And she's like, "I actually have one sitting on the shelf from like 11 years ago that I could send you." And so she sent that to me and actually fit a patient with that analog hearing aid.
Nice.
So that might be the oldest hearing aid that I ever
Nice.
fit.
I like it. I like it.
Nice. Well, that actually leads us right into our next question. What is the difference in sound quality between analog and digital hearing aids?
Oh, it's a completely different experience. I think it's comparable to the transfer from like vinyl records to more digitally processed sound, in that you're going to have people who love and hate both sides of it. I think analog, I don't know, linear amplification overall, maybe for music perception, might be the way that a musician might lean, but I think these digital hearing aids are doing very, very well for themselves.
I think it really depends on the scenario. Like, you go into a really bad background noise situation, you don't have any digital noise reduction, you don't have directionality, you don't have anything that a digital hearing aid would give you to hear better in that situation. On the other hand, analog, if you're listening to music and you can leave that music in the most natural state possible, just amplifying it. So again, it just depends on the situation.
It does depend, and we have the lyric devices that we fit in office, and those operate off of nearly analog amplification as well. And you get people in lyrics, and they're like, "I love it, never going back." never, I want to do this forever. And then you put some people that same type of patient that you would think would be a candidate for more of an analog device, you put them in a lyric and they're like, this is awful, put me back in my digital hearing
Absolutely.
aids. I don't like these and I'm getting way too much background and I don't like the way this sounds.
I think the moral of the story here is it depends. Different people hear different ways. They want to hear different things. Sound quality is kind of my pet peeve, is because everyone's like, well, what hearing aid has the best sound quality? And it's like, well, it depends on you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's so much variability from person to person, perception to perception that,
Hearing loss to hearing loss.
Exactly.
Just everything, like so many variables. So, yeah, good call on that.
So our next question is, when will OTCs be available for purchase?
Supposedly October.
Yeah, October is when it'll become effective, and like you have to be in compliance basically at that time. I think a lot of the devices that are currently available right now will be almost exactly what you will get at that time.
Yeah.
All right. I think it will probably take us into 2023 before we start seeing like any new types of technology hitting the market. So I would say start looking now. Start looking at the companies that you think would be like, oh, that seems like an interesting device to me, and maybe even start kind of considering it at this point. Like, treating your hearing loss now is never a bad idea, right? Whether it's an official OTC device or still a DTC, which is what we have right now.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard anyone say, I treated my hearing loss too soon. So.
Never.
Never. I've never heard
Never
that.
heard that.
I only ever hear how late it was. So.
Last question. Is there a reason other than cost for someone to use an OTC hearing aid and not a prescription hearing aid?
I mean, yeah. We're going to jump into access. I don't know. Can you think of...
Yeah, I mean...
I feel like that's such a broad question.
Yeah, I mean, it's broad.
It's
broad, but let me think of one very specific one that I think has context to this. I think if you live in the middle of Wyoming, nothing against Wyoming, but a little bit more rural, right? You live in the middle of Wyoming, and your closest audiology clinic is 15 hours away, right? I mean, what are your options? I mean, you can drive that and you can go and get treatment. And we have people fly into Arizona to get treatment at our clinic. So, like, some people can do that. But from an accessibility standpoint, that is what you would not consider accessible.
Right.
So if your options are to either, in your mind, do nothing or purchase an OTC device because you don't have actual access to an audiology clinic, I say buy the OTC device.
Yeah.
Even if you get 50% of the benefit of what prescription would get you. I'd rather you have 50% of something than 0% of the best thing, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
We see a lot of patients who have that mild amount of hearing loss that don't feel ready yet to potentially spend what a prescription hearing aid would cost in their area, and they still need to get started with something. And so if OTC is the way to do that, then OTC is the way to do that. That's exactly what this regulation was
if that's
created
what you
off
need
of.
to do to prove to yourself that, okay, use of a hearing aid is what's going to help me, and then that is your stepping stone to getting a prescriptive level hearing aid, then that's fine too.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that there's any bad entry point into treating your hearing loss for anybody.
No. Nope. It's always worth it.
Always worth it. Well, Kelsey, thank you so much for coming back on and
Anytime.
sharing the questions.
Anytime.
I know that there's probably more questions on there. We will try to get to those questions just by typing out the answers or maybe in following weeks. So never be afraid to ask your questions on there. And as you can see, the sooner you ask your questions in the show, the more likelihood that we're actually going to answer them.
This is true. We're going in chronological order, so got to be ready.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for spending this week with us as well. We always appreciate you taking time out of your day to spend it with us. So if you guys like this show, make sure you tune in for next week, because we're basically talking about the other things from a comparative aspect between OTC and prescription hearing aids. You can watch us live on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and WTSMTV.com. And as always, we'll see you next week.